Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Today, we're going to have a look at a couple of people claiming that atheism is, in fact, a religion in and of itself. Now, while atheism is a rejection of the God claim, it isn't necessarily a rejection of religion itself. There are non-theistic religions that don't specifically hold to the existence or worship of any god, such as Buddhism or Jainism. But even though atheism isn't directly opposed to religion, it seems strange to try to claim that atheism itself is a religion. But let's hear them out and see if their arguments hold any water. So first up, we're going to hear from Andy Bannister. Take it away, Andy.
People often ask me, Andy, why do you keep calling atheism a religion? Isn't atheism just a lack of belief in God? It's not a religion. Well, I'm afraid that's wrong. That actually the more you look at atheism, the more you realise it's far more than just the lack of a belief in God. Let me show you why. If atheism simply meant the absence of belief in God, the first problem is it would have some very peculiar entailments. It would mean that rocks, small kittens, rubber chickens, Richard Dawkins' left foot are all atheists because all of those things lack a belief in God.
Stop, don't come back.
Well, that's not how things work. In order to lack a belief in something, one must first have the ability to hold a belief in the first place. You don't call rocks non-political for not being part of a political party. You don't say rubber chickens are anti-science just because they don't actually believe in the heliocentric model. These are terms that apply to humans capable of understanding these ideas and adopting such positions. Saying that inanimate objects are atheists because, hey, they lack a belief in God too, is just obtuse nonsense. It's you thinking you're making a zinger of a point, but you're really just making yourself look foolish.
That's a very counterintuitive conclusion, and it strongly suggests that atheism is far more than just the absence of a belief in God. That can't be the definition.
Well, sorry, Charlie, but it is the definition. You seem to be confused as to the definition of an idea versus an idea holder. Let me ask you this, Andy. Rather than defining atheism, what is the definition of an atheist? Well, would you look at that? It's defined as a person who does not believe in the existence of a god or any gods, one who subscribes to or advocates atheism. It doesn't say that an atheist is a rock that doesn't believe in God. It doesn't say that an atheist is a small kitten that doesn't believe in God. It doesn't even say that an atheist is Richard Dawkins' left foot because it doesn't believe in God. In order to be an atheist, one must be a person. That is the starting point. Then, that person must subscribe to the idea of atheism, the idea of not believing in any god or gods. So the idea does not need to specify that it can only be held by a person because the definition of the idea holder already entails that.
A second problem with the idea that atheism is merely the lack of belief in God is that if that were the case, how could it form part of someone's core identity?
Technically speaking, it doesn't. But as most people do hold to certain theistic religious beliefs, and those tend to be a major part of the individual's core identity, the lack of such beliefs tends to at least be worth mentioning in explaining one's identity to others. Atheism does not have any mandates, imperatives, beliefs, or attitudes imposed by it. So there's nothing that comes from atheism that in any way forms a part of a person's core identity. But the fact that religions typically do have all of those things that do impact a person's identity, and religion is so widespread, it's often assumed that one has religious belief automatically. So someone who doesn't has to go out of their way to mention that they don't. For instance, it's very common when getting to know someone for the first time for them to ask you what religion you are. Not if you're religious, but to automatically assume that you are and that there's some religion that makes up part or all of your worldview. In fact, in Western society, it's not at all uncommon for people to automatically assume that everyone is Christian and impose Christian ideas upon others without even checking to see if that person ascribes to Christianity at all.
All right, fine. Here you go. Here's your $500. But you know what, Billy Ray? What goes around comes around.
This is so unchristian.
Unchristian?
In fact, if atheism enters into someone's identity at all, it's only in response to religious individuals and the wider culture at large attempting to confer religious affiliation onto someone who doesn't want it. You can't be gay, the Bible says that's a sin. Well, I'm an atheist, so I don't care what it says in your holy book. You can't get an abortion. God said in the Bible that before you were born, he knew you. So that means abortion is murder. Well, I'm an atheist, so I don't care what it says in your holy book. You had sex before marriage? That is lust. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. You better pray for forgiveness or else you're going to get sent to hell. Well, I'm an atheist, so I don't care what it says in your holy book. There go those atheists again, always going on and on about not believing in God. Hey, if you don't believe in God, why do you spend so much time talking about it?
For the atheists mocking God, they sure do spend a lot of time and money mocking a God they don't believe in.
Why would anybody spend so much time ranting and raving about something that they don't believe in?
Today I'm going to give an argument with the conclusion that all atheists should delete their channels and stop criticizing Christianity.
This isn't us making atheism a core part of our identity. It's us explaining why your theistic religion isn't making up a core part of our identity. And it's your Christian superiority complex that leads you to think that your religion should be part of a person's identity, and that such a thing is so normal that a person not having it, their lack of theistic belief, is in fact a part of their identity at all.
You see, I don't believe in Father Christmas. I don't believe in the Tooth Fairy. But I don't go around introducing myself to people as an A-Tooth Fairian. That's not what you'll find on my Twitter profile.
I bet you would if we lived in a tooth fairy theocracy. I bet if every time you drank a soda, some stranger butted in and said, "Hey, the tooth fairy says that soda will rot your teeth, and that drinking it is a sin against the holy word of the dental Madonna," you'd probably respond by declaring yourself an A-Tooth Fairian. If it got to a point where every time you finished a meal, if you didn't immediately start to floss, people would approach you and cuss you out because their children are watching you, and they don't want to have to explain that kind of sinful, anti-dentite behavior to them, then I bet you would put it in your Twitter profile.
Yeah, and you're an anti-dentite. I am not an anti-dentite. You're a rabid anti-dentite.
That's also demonstrated by my third piece of evidence, and it's that atheists and secularists are now starting churches. Yeah, they really are. A few years ago in London, England, a group of atheists came together, took over a deconsecrated church in London, and they started something called the Sunday Assembly. They meet together on Sunday mornings, they sing secular songs, they listen to inspirational talks about science. They formed an atheist church.
So, they formed a club. That means they're religious. Is that where we're at now? Any group that gets together and talks or sings together is now a religion? Is that how it works? Mensa meeting? Oops, you're a religion now. Local book club? Sorry, you're now a book clubian. Meeting up with your friends at the sports bar to watch your favorite team play? You're practically a monk at Sunday service. Look, by your own admission, they were engaging in secular activities. They were listening to science lectures, and they were singing secular songs. They were doing all secular things, so that makes them a religion, doesn't it? Oops. Turns out that is the opposite of what secular means.
So atheism looks like a religion. It is behaving like a belief system. It has churches, it has creeds, it has communities, it has gurus. It really is a religion, a belief system.
Whoa. You skipped over a few major points there. So you said it has churches, creeds, communities, and gurus. The only thing that you've established thus far is that there are some atheist communities. You haven't established that it has churches, because a club getting together and doing secular things is not a church. And you haven't said anything at all about creeds or gurus. Creeds are a set of beliefs. Atheism has none. And you've not even mentioned anything about atheism having beliefs. And you haven't said anything about any leaders or gurus within atheism. Certainly there are some strong and popular atheism proponents, but there's a major difference between an advocate of an idea and a guru or faith leader. So basically all you've established is that atheists sometimes get together and hang out. And now you're hop, skipping, and jumping to all these other things that you haven't established, haven't even mentioned in this video, like creeds and gurus. All we've got is that atheists hang out sometimes. Boom! Makes it a religion. Argument over. That's not going to fly, Andy.
You see, if atheism is a belief system, there are some entailments that follow. And one of the biggest ones is this. If atheism is a religion or a belief system, you can't simply assume it. You have to give reasons for it. You have to give evidence.
Oh, now I see. Now I get it. Now the pieces are falling into place. It's all coming together now. I must say this opens my eyes. Another case closed, my dear Watson.
Oh, so that's what this is all about. The old reversal of the burden of proof. Theists have long hated the fact that they are constantly on the defensive in the debate with atheists. Being expected to actually prove your claim is a rough position to be in, especially when your theistic claim is a basically unprovable one. It was so much nicer in Christian antiquity when the existence of God was accepted as axiomatic. Now, Christians are actually expected to back up their beliefs, especially when you attempt to impose it upon others through legislation or cultural expectation. That must really suck for you. It'd be so much easier if the atheists were the ones who had to prove their position, especially since a core part of the God claim is its unfalsifiability. That means that if you can reverse the burden of proof onto atheists, they'll automatically lose every single debate with a theist forever and ever. Unfortunately, that isn't how it works. Despite your shoddy attempt here to establish otherwise, atheism is not a religion. It has no creeds, it has no gurus, and it only serves to be a part of someone's identity in absentia to a theistic belief. And the fact that some atheists get together and hang out sometimes, which is really the only substantial thing that you came with today, does not rise an atheist hangout to the level of a religion. So, Andy, a big swing and a miss with that attempt to reverse the burden of proof. So let's move on, because there's someone else who wants to try to establish atheism as a religion.
Atheists, they pull away when you say that their religion is a faith. How can we convince them of this point?
Hey, look, everybody! It's Michael Knowles!
Wow! That's amazing!
You know, Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's media company. He's an active commentator on all things cultural, political, and of course, spiritual. So he's got lots of thoughts on theism and atheism. You guys know Michael Knowles, right?
He's a pedantic, pontificating, pretentious bastard, a belligerent old fart, a worthless, steaming pile of cow dung, figuratively speaking.
So Michael Knowles and his guest Anthony DeStefano also have some thoughts on atheism being a religion. I'm sure they'll get an accurate and fair take on the nature of atheism.
Well, a faith is just believing something that you can't mathematically prove. That's all faith is, and atheists take so many things on faith. They believe that everything came from nothing. Well, you can't prove that scientifically. They believe that this amazing universe of ours of incomparable beauty, harmony, and order came about by itself. That's faith.
While you're right that faith is believing in something that you can't prove, that's about all that you get right. The universe coming from nothing is not an atheistic position. As I've said before, there's only one atheistic position, that of not believing in God. Being an atheist has nothing to do with any belief in where the universe came from. An atheist may indeed believe that the universe came from nothing. An atheist could also believe that the universe has always existed in some form or other. An atheist could also believe that we're all NPCs in an advanced civilization's computer simulation. An atheist could also believe in universe-belching unicorns in the 8th dimension burping us into existence, or any number of other notions about where the universe comes from. The point is that no belief in the universe's origin is an intrinsic part of atheism. Understand me. Atheism equals no God belief. That's it. Now, as far as faith as it pertains to the origins of the universe goes, there is a difference between believing in something that you can't prove based on no empirical evidence at all, and an educated best guess based on the currently available data. While we certainly don't know all the ins and outs of exactly how and why our universe formed, we do know some things. We do know that the Big Bang happened. That's indisputable at this point. And we do know that there was an initial state of high density and temperature at the time of the Big Bang. There is nothing that indicates that there was ever nothing. So while we don't know all there is to know about the origins of the universe, and there are different hypotheses about it, it would be an educated guess at this point to say that the universe could very well be eternal, going back into the past to the beginning of time itself. That would be the best guess based on the available data. Believing a magic space wizard bippity-boppity-booed it all into existence from nothing, that would be faith. Please tell me you understand the difference.
They're trapped into this whole materialist worldview where everything has to do with atoms and molecules. You know, all our hopes and dreams and desires, all our art and culture and history, all our deepest desire for everything that's good and beautiful and true, all that to them is just due to the random movement of molecules. That's not science.
None of that is due to random movement of molecules. He says atoms at first, then says molecules, seeming to use the two terms interchangeably. They aren't the same thing. Molecules are groups of atoms held together by chemical bonds, and their structure results in specific chemical reactions. So, molecules by no means behave randomly. They do very specific things based on their composition. We have an entire branch of science that studies specifically this. It's called chemistry. And no chemist would ever say that molecules just do things completely at random. And it's through our understanding of these reactions, these specific functions that molecules carry out, that we can understand how all biology works, how the atmosphere develops and changes over time in response to various events, how DNA works, as DNA is a molecule. And our DNA is what gives us our brains, from which emergent aspects of our minds and culture, such as our emotions, our aesthetic notions of beauty and art, all our hopes and dreams and desires, as you put it, are all emergent properties of our brains, which develop through the evolution of our DNA, which is a molecule. So yes, all of those things came from specific, understandable, and reliable functions of molecules. And knowing that is not a belief that is based in faith. It's an understanding of proven, established science. Your inability to wrap your head around that, and your incredulity at the idea of it, is like listening to someone who doesn't understand math insisting that 2 + 2 can only logically equal 22, and then belittling your idiotic, nonsensical notion of 2 + 2 equaling 4.
So they have a faith. They must be called out on this point because this faith that they have has been responsible for more bloodshed and carnage than any system of beliefs the world has ever known.
And really in service of the faith.
Ah, that old chestnut. That atheism is responsible for mass deaths and bloodshed. Seriously, you theists need to stop trying to establish that notion because history just does not bear that out, and you aren't going to get away with trying to rewrite the history books. I mean, how can you even try to compare the historical carnage caused by religious belief to that of atheism? You do not want to compare numbers. Religion is responsible for the genocides of the Canaanites and the Amalekites from biblical history. Then there was the little spat called the Crusades. The entire Dark Ages in Western Europe were a product of an iron-fisted theocracy. The Spanish Inquisition, the 30 Years' War. the genocide of the Native American peoples by European imperialism, seeking to eliminate the savages who didn't believe in their Christian God. The seemingly never-ending Israeli-Palestinian conflict, religious persecution and killing of apostates and non-Muslims in general that is still prevalent in many Muslim nations, and a little issue known as the Holocaust and Nazism in general, which, despite Christians' attempts to paint as some kind of atheistic regime, was certainly about as Christian as you can get. Robert P. Erickson and Susanna Heschel wrote about the results of a German census conducted during the height of the Nazi regime. It established that 54% of the population considered itself Protestant, 40% considered itself Catholic, 3.5% self-identified as neo-pagan, and a whole whopping 1.5% declared themselves as non-believers. And these are just a small sampling of wars and atrocities directly connected to religious belief. And where you could establish atheistic regimes as responsible for similar atrocities, such as Stalin's Soviet Union or Mao's China, you can't establish that those atrocities were motivated by atheism the same way you can easily establish the religious motivations of, well, every holy war. So I'm going to have to call BS on the notion that atheism is responsible for more death and bloodshed than religion, just as I'm calling BS on the very idea of atheism itself being a religious belief. And that's really all that Anthony, DeStefano, and Michael have to say for themselves here. But hey, at least we can take solace in the fact that there was actually very little said by Michael Knowles in that clip at all. So there is that. So from Andy Bannister's erroneous asserting of atheism as a religion in an effort to reverse the burden of proof, to DeStefano and Knowles' claim that molecules don't make up the universe, or atheism is responsible for all or most of the bad stuff in history, these attempts to establish atheism as a religion just end up falling flat on their faces. There's no belief with atheism. There is no worship. There is no worldview. There are no creeds or gurus or churches. There is no faith. And faith is certainly in short supply because we can't even have faith that people like you will understand atheism or atheists at all. So, thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when a new video comes out. Until next time, I'm Professor Plink reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.